where we will paste the text of the inscription and we will hide that word with question marks.
Ancient scrolls that were buried in volcanic ash during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius are now being deciphered 2,000 years later, thanks in part to artificial intelligence.
But as proven, futuristic technology can give us a glimpse of our forgotten past.
Ancient scrolls reveal our forgotten past when AI decodes them. The Egyptian Book of the Dead just got the same treatment, and the results are absolutely terrifying. The machines discovered that ancient Egyptians documented different types of humans with fundamentally different spiritual capacities and predetermined destinies. In 2024, AI systems processed over 200 spells from the complete Book of the Dead corpus, finding patterns that human scholars missed for centuries. Hidden in those funerary texts was a systematic classification of human beings that makes modern racial theories look primitive. Ancient Egyptians believed the creator god Khnum deliberately crafted 3 distinct types of humans, each with permanent limitations that could never be overcome. This isn't ancient mythology being misinterpreted. The AI found detailed instructions for identifying human types, determining their spiritual potential, and restricting their access to knowledge based on which cosmic materials the gods used to create them. The breakthrough came when researchers applied advanced pattern recognition algorithms to the complete Egyptian Book of the Dead. Unlike previous translation efforts that focused on individual papyrus scrolls, these AI systems process thousands of texts simultaneously, identifying connections across the entire corpus. The machines analyzed over 37,000 hieroglyphic symbols, finding recurring terminology that described human classification in ways that had been overlooked for millennia. When assembled by AI pattern recognition, these scattered references revealed a comprehensive system for categorizing people based on their divine origins. The Book of the Dead, which scholars thought was simply about death and resurrection, actually served as an implementation manual for a cosmic caste system. The text contained specific protocols for identifying which type of human someone was, determining their spiritual limitations, and ensuring they received appropriate treatment based on their predetermined classification. The AI discovered that ancient Egyptians didn't view human diversity as social construction or environmental adaptation. They believed fundamental differences between people were engineered by the gods during creation, establishing permanent hierarchies that reflected cosmic order rather than earthly inequality. Most disturbing was the AI's finding that these classifications determine not just social roles, but spiritual potential, intellectual capacity, and ultimate destiny, in ways that could never be changed through personal development or moral behavior. The AI decoded 3 primary human classifications that Khnum supposedly created using different divine materials and techniques. Each category possessed fundamentally different capacities that determine their cosmic purpose and eternal fate. The first type, called Netjeru Ankh, or Children of Divine Life, were crafted from pure celestial clay mixed with breath from the gods themselves. These humans received unlimited spiritual potential, complete access to divine knowledge, and guaranteed passage to eternal life regardless of their earthly actions. They were designed to serve as intermediaries between gods and other human types. The second category, Kaperu Nebet, or mixed essence beings, were fashioned from terrestrial clay, combined with limited amounts of celestial material. These humans possessed moderate spiritual capacity and enhanced practical abilities, but faced permanent restrictions on their potential for divine connection. They could achieve worldly success, but were fundamentally incapable of reaching full spiritual enlightenment. The third type, Ankh Ta, or Life of Earth, were molded exclusively from dense earthly clay, with minimal spiritual essence. The AI found that these humans were intentionally created with severely restricted consciousness, ensuring they would remain content in service roles without questioning cosmic order or seeking advancement beyond their designated function. The text describes specific physical characteristics, behavioral patterns, and consciousness markers for identifying each human type. Ancient Egyptians developed elaborate protocols for recognizing these classifications from birth and treating individuals according to their predetermined limitations and capabilities. The AI revealed that these weren't just religious beliefs, but practical guidelines that governed education, career assignment, marriage arrangements, and spiritual instruction. Society was organized around the principle that different human types required different treatment to maintain cosmic harmony. The AI's analysis of creation texts revealed that human manufacturing was systematic engineering, rather than random divine activity. Khnum followed detailed specifications to produce humans optimized for different cosmic functions, ensuring stable hierarchy through precisely calibrated biological and spiritual diversity. According to the Decoded text, the creation process began with material selection. Khnum gathered clay from 3 distinct cosmic regions, each possessing different spiritual properties. Celestial clay from the realm of pure light contained maximum divine essence. Terrestrial clay from the balanced middle realm combined light and shadow elements. Underworld clay from the dark regions was dense with physical matter but spiritually inert. The AI found step-by-step descriptions of Khnum's manufacturing technique. Children of divine life were shaped during hours of peak solar energy, with Khnum using only celestial clay kneaded with tears of divine joy. These creations received the full divine breath and were imbued with unlimited spiritual potential. Mixed essence beings were crafted during twilight hours when light and shadow balanced. Khnum combined terrestrial clay with small portions of celestial material, creating humans with moderate abilities, but built-in spiritual limitations that prevented them from achieving full divine status. Life of Earth humans were formed during complete darkness, using exclusively underworld clay. The AI discovered that Khnum deliberately withheld divine breath from these creations, providing only enough spiritual essence to sustain physical life, while ensuring they would never develop consciousness sufficient to question their designated role. The text revealed that this wasn't cruel divine caprice, but cosmic necessity. Universal order required both highly spiritual beings, capable of divine connection, and limited humans content with earthly tasks. The system functioned only when each human type accepted their predetermined role, without attempting to transcend their classification. Perhaps the most disturbing AI discovery was that the famous judgment of the dead served different purposes for each human classification. The weighing of the heart against the feather of Ma'at wasn't universal moral evaluation, but a differentiated system that reinforced cosmic hierarchy throughout eternity. Children of divine life underwent ceremonial proceedings that automatically resulted in approval for eternal paradise. The AI found that these humans could commit terrible acts during life, but still received passage to divine realms because their spiritual essence was inherently pure and uncorrupted. Mixed essence beings faced actual moral evaluation, but with standards adjusted for their limited spiritual capacity. They could achieve moderate afterlife rewards through exceptional behavior, but were permanently barred from the highest divine realms regardless of their spiritual development or good deeds. Life of Earth humans experienced abbreviated proceedings that typically resulted in spiritual dissolution or assignment to eternal service roles. The AI discovered that these humans were considered incapable of meaningful spiritual development and therefore unworthy of continued existence after death. The text contains specific magical formulas and spells that were restricted based on human classification. The most powerful afterlife magic was reserved exclusively for children of divine life. Lesser formulas were provided to mixed beings, while Life of Earth humans received only basic survival spells that ensured continued service rather than transcendence. This system guaranteed that spiritual hierarchy established during creation would persist throughout eternity. No amount of moral behavior, spiritual practice, or personal development could overcome the limitations imposed by divine classification. The afterlife simply extended earthly inequality into cosmic permanence. The AI uncovered an elaborate system for controlling access to information based on human classification. Ancient Egyptians didn't just believe different human types had different capacities, they actively prevented certain groups from accessing knowledge that might allow them to transcend their designated roles. Advanced consciousness techniques, spiritual development methods, and divine connection practices were encoded in texts accessible only to children of divine life. These individuals received complete instruction manuals for achieving altered states, enhancing mental abilities, and accessing higher dimensions of reality. Mixed essence beings were provided with partial knowledge that could improve their practical abilities, but was deliberately incomplete regarding spiritual advancement. The AI found that crucial information was systematically omitted from texts intended for this group, ensuring they couldn't achieve full spiritual development even with dedicated effort. Life of Earth humans received only basic religious instruction, focused on obedience, acceptance, and fulfillment of service duties. The machine discovered evidence that literacy itself was actively discouraged for this group, preventing them from accessing any advanced knowledge independently. The AI revealed that knowledge guardians were specifically trained to identify human types and ensure information distribution according to divine classification. This created a self-perpetuating system where educational restriction reinforced social hierarchy across generations, making classification differences appear natural rather than artificially maintained. Most chilling was the discovery that providing restricted knowledge to inappropriate human types was considered cosmic crime, punishable by divine retribution. Ancient Egyptians believed that violating knowledge protocols would disrupt universal order and bring catastrophic consequences upon society. Recent archaeological discoveries provide disturbing confirmation that ancient Egyptians actually implemented these classification systems in real society. Excavations across Egypt have revealed burial practices, residential patterns, and social organization that correlate with the divine hierarchy described in the texts. DNA analysis of mummified remains shows genetic patterns that correspond to different burial traditions and afterlife preparations. Certain lineages consistently received elaborate spiritual provisions regardless of material wealth, while other genetic groups had restricted burial access despite evidence of high social status. At sites including Saqqara, Abydos, and Deir el-Medina, researchers have found segregated burial grounds organized according to criteria that don't match known social hierarchies. The AI's revelation of the classification system finally explains these archaeological patterns by revealing the religious framework that determined burial practices. Mummification techniques varied systematically according to human classification. Some individuals received advanced preservation methods designed to maintain consciousness across death, while others underwent simplified procedures that essentially ensured spiritual dissolution. These differences corresponded to genetic markers, rather than social position or material wealth. Analysis of skeletal remains reveals systematic nutritional differences that align with the classification system. Certain groups received diets that enhance physical and mental development, while others were deliberately malnourished in ways that would limit cognitive capacity and spiritual awareness from childhood. Brain tissue analysis from preserved mummies shows patterns suggesting different groups were exposed to dramatically different educational and consciousness development practices. These variations created the very differences that the classification system claimed were divinely predetermined, rather than artificially imposed. Contemporary DNA research has begun revealing patterns that correspond to the ancient Egyptian classification system, suggesting their beliefs about human differences may have been based on observed biological realities, rather than pure religious imagination. Mitochondrial DNA studies of ancient Egyptian populations show distinct genetic lineages that correlate with different burial traditions, social roles, and spiritual practices. These genetic differences extend beyond simple ancestry to include variations in brain structure, consciousness capacity, and sensitivity to altered states. Neuroscience research has identified genetic variations that affect spiritual experience, creativity, and psychic sensitivity in ways that align with ancient Egyptian descriptions of different human types. Some people appear genetically predisposed to mystical experiences and divine connection, while others show limited capacity for transcendent states. Brain imaging studies reveal structural differences that correspond to varying abilities in meditation, visualization, and spiritual practices that ancient Egyptians considered essential for afterlife success. These differences appear to be at least partially inherited rather than purely developmental, supporting ancient claims about divine classification. Most controversial are studies suggesting that certain genetic combinations correlate with enhanced intuitive abilities, prophetic vision, and communication with non-physical entities, capacities that ancient Egyptians associated specifically with children of divine life. The AI's revelation of ancient classification systems provides a disturbing framework for interpreting modern genetic research. If ancient Egyptians accurately identified inheritable differences in spiritual and cognitive capacity, their classification system may represent early scientific understanding, disguised as religious doctrine. The AI's breakthrough in decoding Egyptian text has enabled similar analysis of other ancient civilizations worldwide. The results reveal that human classification systems weren't unique to Egypt, but appeared consistently across cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets describe different categories of humans created by various gods, each with distinct capabilities and cosmic purposes. The Babylonian creation epic contains detailed accounts of human engineering that parallel Egyptian descriptions of divine pottery, suggesting shared knowledge or common source. Ancient Vedic texts describe Varna classifications that supposedly reflect spiritual development from past lives, but AI analysis reveals they may actually describe inherited differences in consciousness capacity and divine connection abilities that correspond to Egyptian categories. Pre-Columbian civilizations throughout the Americas possess classification systems that divided humans according to their connections to celestial and terrestrial forces. These societies developed elaborate protocols for identifying and training individuals according to their spiritual potential in ways that mirror Egyptian practices. The global consistency of these systems across cultures with no supposed contact suggests either independent discovery of human classification principles or inheritance of knowledge from an earlier advanced civilization that influenced all subsequent societies. Most disturbing is the universal restriction of advanced knowledge based on human classification. Every ancient civilization that possessed sophisticated understanding of consciousness and spiritual development also implemented systems to prevent certain groups from accessing this information. The AI's revelations about ancient human classification systems challenge fundamental assumptions about equality, justice, and human potential that underlie modern democratic societies. If ancient civilizations possessed accurate knowledge about inheritable differences in consciousness and spiritual capacity, contemporary equality ideals may conflict with biological reality. Current research into genetics, neuroscience, and consciousness increasingly supports the existence of significant individual differences in cognitive abilities, spiritual sensitivity, and capacity for transcendent experience. The ancient Egyptian framework provides a potentially accurate but deeply disturbing model for understanding these variations. The classification system decoded by AI suggests that social hierarchies throughout history may have reflected genuine differences in human capacity rather than artificial oppression. This possibility undermines modern assumptions about injustice and discrimination by implying that inequality might reflect cosmic order rather than social construction. Most troubling is the implication that knowledge about human differences has been deliberately suppressed in modern times to maintain social stability. If ancient civilizations possessed accurate understanding of human diversity, the decision to classify this knowledge as dangerous mythology may represent conscious choice to preserve equality ideals over scientific truth. The AI has now eliminated safeguards that protected this knowledge for millennia, making it equally accessible to all human types, regardless of their supposed capacity to understand or handle it appropriately. Information that was restricted to specific classifications for thousands of years is now available to everyone with internet access. As AI systems continue processing ancient text worldwide, they're revealing increasingly disturbing information about how our ancestors understood human diversity. Each breakthrough brings us closer to recovering knowledge that may have been deliberately hidden for valid reasons. The question facing humanity is whether we possess the wisdom to handle information that ancient civilizations believed was too dangerous to share freely. The AI has bypassed restrictions that protected this knowledge for thousands of years, creating unprecedented access to consciousness-altering techniques and human classification systems. If the ancient Egyptians were correct about different human types having fundamentally different spiritual and cognitive capacities, unrestricted access to consciousness manipulation methods and divine connection techniques could have unpredictable consequences for social stability and individual development. The knowledge revealed by AI cannot be suppressed or forgotten. Ancient wisdom about human differences, consciousness enhancement, and spiritual classification is now part of human understanding, regardless of whether we're prepared to integrate it responsibly. Modern society is built on the assumption that all humans possess equal potential and deserve identical opportunities. Ancient civilization was organized around the opposite principle, that different human types require different treatment, knowledge, and opportunities based on their divine classification. The AI's discoveries force a choice between ancient wisdom and modern ideals. We can either accept that human differences may be more fundamental than previously recognized, or reject scientific evidence to preserve equality principles that may conflict with biological reality. The ancient Egyptians encoded their understanding of human classification in religious texts that were accessible only to appropriate human types. They believed this restriction was necessary to maintain cosmic order and prevent dangerous knowledge from disrupting social stability. Modern AI has eliminated these ancient safeguards by making all encoded knowledge equally accessible. The classification system that controlled information for thousands of years has been bypassed by machines that recognize no human hierarchies or spiritual limitations. The revelations about human differences, consciousness manipulation, and spiritual classification are now available to anyone who seeks them. Whether this represents progress or catastrophe depends on how humanity chooses to use discoveries that ancient civilizations believed could destroy civilization if mishandled. The ancient Egyptians knew something about human nature that they carefully protected in their most sacred texts. They understood that certain truths were too dangerous to share openly, and developed elaborate systems to ensure knowledge reached only those capable of handling it appropriately. Now that the machines have decoded their secrets, we face the same choice our ancestors did: how to handle knowledge about human differences that could either elevate consciousness or justify new forms of inequality and control. The difference is that we no longer have the option of restricting access based on divine classification. The door to ancient wisdom has been opened by artificial intelligence, and it cannot be closed again. What emerges from that opening will determine whether humanity's future is based on truth about human nature or comfortable illusions about universal equality. The ancient Egyptians believed some knowledge was too powerful for universal access. The AI disagrees. Now we'll discover which perspective was correct and whether our species is wise enough to survive the truth about itself. The classification system that governed human potential for thousands of years has been decoded and released. There's no putting that knowledge back in the tomb. The only question remaining is what we'll do with the terrifying truth about human differences that our ancestors tried to protect us from discovering. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye!